Tonight we are going to talk, at least for a little while, about sexual violence. I was privy today to a kerfuffle on Twitter that spilled onto other social media, into blogs. It was localized. It's a couple of small-time operators, like me. I didn't see everything because it did turn into a bit of a flame war. But the interactions between these two people, and the husband of one of them ended up getting roped into all this, began over their writings and opinings with this whole Duggar sexual molestation thing. And there's a woman and a man. The woman wrote a blog post objecting to this leveling impulse that some have had in dealing with this news that's come out about the Duggars. And by that I mean some have had the impulse to say, well, it's not so bad. You all don't really understand what happens in the mind of a 14-year-old boy, what being a 14-year-old boy is like, and basically all pushing towards it's not so bad, it's not as bad as you think. But she wrote a very excellent post about basically bringing people down to your level, and just everyone kind of just dragging everyone else into the mud and saying we're all in the mud together. We're all a bunch of really bad people and killers and rapists. The remarkable thing is not that the young Duggar was such, so you have the audacity to say that you're not. So this woman was pointing out some of the hypocrisy in that and questioning some of the motivation. I didn't agree with everything she said, but you can probably tell from how I'm speaking that I mostly agreed with her position. Someone, sorry, I have a cough tonight. Someone objected to what she'd said. Apparently a lot of people did, but one guy in particular, a pastor, and he asked her, by the way, I'm saying her and he because I'm not going to post the links to these articles. I'm just going to talk about these ideas. So, this pastor began speaking about sexual violence and how universal it was, and he, on Twitter, told this woman that she should ask her husband if he had ever had any thoughts of rape. Thoughts about committing rape. She asked her husband. Her husband said no. He had not had thoughts about raping. Okay. Now, before I get to the actual topic, long build-up, huh? We're almost 5 minutes in. Let's talk a little bit about sexual violence, and I would love for you to let me know in the comment section below if we should explore this a little bit more. An uncomfortable topic. So, men are strong and violent, and they were made by God to be dragon slayers. And with the fall, we've been broken and perverted. We were made originally different from women, and so we've come out broken, different from women as well. And I believe that it's relatively obvious that, there's nothing actually intrinsically wrong with violence. That's not the relatively obvious part. But it's what we are violent against. It defines it's good or evil. It seems to me pretty obvious that men's propensity to violence is mixed in with their sexuality. And I think that sometimes women can be naive about that. And it's something my wife and I have spoken about at length, as we're raising our 3 boys and 2 girls, and as we're being married together. And if you hang out with pagan men for any amount of time, I mean, we don't talk this, I say we, I'm not a pagan man, I'm a man. Men don't speak the same way in their own company as they do around women, or even somewhere women might be, right? But at the bar, in the locker room, in all male atmospheres, men talk about rape all the time. And they don't actually talk about raping women very often at all. That's poor form. They talk about raping each other. And I know that a bunch of you out there know exactly what I'm talking about. Why do men talk about raping each other? Because it's such a pure form of dominance. Now, of course, most of it is just joking, right? Bend someone over and do such and such to them. I mean, just the foulest, crassest language. It's just a normal way for men to talk. And what is that? That's the dominance play that men engage in. I'm stronger than you are. You're stronger than I. Here's our hierarchy. That's the enemy. Those are the guys we're playing against. That's the other company. That's the department whose sales we're trying to beat. That's the other, and we're going to rape them too. Just rape everywhere. Because there's not a more pure way we can express complete dominance and conquest than that. That's how ingrained it is in the fallen male mind. Now, I, pardon me, have never spoken that way. I became a Christian at a young age. I was brought up in a Christian household. So, even in my blackest moments, I tend to play by those rules, right? But I don't think I'm saying something that's outside the male norm when I say that being angry, sinning in anger, being taken by a flash of rage, a flash of anger, that's not something that happens in a male mind absent from violence and absent from sexuality. So I actually do think, just as this guy on Twitter thought he was going to get this husband to say, yeah, I've had rapey thoughts. I think it's very normal to have rapey thoughts. A lot depends on how you define it, right? And fantasizing is something else entirely. We are talking about whether men are prone to sexual violence. It's pretty ubiquitously a part of the male mind. Men are prone to violence. Men are prone to sexual sin. Men are prone to want to dominate. Okay? And Christians use the word dominion positively. But what fallen man wants to do is to break and rule and destroy and take all power from all around them. Just in the normal course of the day. Okay, so I've established that, like this guy on Twitter, I think finding a man who hasn't had some kind of rapey thought at some point would be a bizarre and strange thing. We are getting closer. We're 10 minutes in. We're getting closer to the actual point. Here is the bridge to the point. When I was 25 years old or so, I'd been married for 3 years. I went out to go to university again. I went to college again. I was this 25-year-old with all these 18-year-olds. So our Latin study group spent a lot of time playing video games and studying Latin into the wee hours of the morning. And we became pretty close. Just dudes. And at one point, a young man in this group, remember I was 25, this is many years ago, this 18-year-old kid made the claim that he had never masturbated. Right. So nearly every male who's watching this is very skeptical, and no one believed that young man. No one. In fact, they began to ridicule him. Now, as it happens, 37-year-old me agrees with 25-year-old me. This is what I did then. I was older, so I kind of bossed them around. And I urged everyone to shut up. This kid wasn't making a claim like, I have never lusted after a woman. He said, I've never masturbated. And the rest of us, at one point or another, had been so embroiled in our own lusts that we were incapable of imagining that some regular guy, like a guy we know, could pull that off, could possibly do that. And that was sin. It was sin not to take the young man's word for it. He hadn't said anything that the Bible clearly taught was impossible, right? So why can't we believe him? He never claimed that he didn't lust after women in his heart. So, this man on Twitter, waiting for this woman's husband to admit to being rapey like everyone else. What is he doing? I think that within Reformed, Evangelical, Protestant circles, we can all pretty much agree that all men are guilty of breaking the Ten Commandments. Okay, so let's use that as a nice, convenient framework. If someone were to tell me that he'd never coveted another man's wife, I would not believe him. If someone were to tell me that he had never stolen, I would not believe him. If I were speaking to a thief, someone who acknowledged himself to be a thief, someone who was a known thief, and this thief said to me, I have never even been tempted to commit armed robbery, to engage in assault, why should I not believe him? It is in the nature of some men to beat people up and take their things. It is in the nature of other men to be sneaky little bastards. Okay. Now, Christians, talking to Christians, how much more charity should there be? To his own master he stands and falls. There's a misapprehension out there, I think, in some circles, that all men, at all times, have committed all sins. And that's just, it's unbiblical. And it's not confessional, if you are the confessional type. Except, possibly for a couple which going to come up in the comment sections. We can argue there. The depravity of man, total depravity, means that our natures are completely unable to effect any salvific good. Now, God's grace is such that bad people do good things all the time. And then we start getting really complicated, right? We start talking, we're operating on different levels all of a sudden. And can an evil man do a righteous thing? Is that even possible? The Bible teaches that anything that is not done through faith is sin. For Christians, especially people who are covenantal, the new man is in you. You know, there's common grace all over the world. And evildoers are often restrained. So if an evildoer comes to me and says, I have never been tempted to break into your house and kill you, and take your wife and take your things, even though in my head I have done all those things, I've never entertained the thought of actually going in and doing it. Much less have I ever done it, because here you are, standing talking to me. God restrains us. God restrains man. And then there's us, Christians. If a Christian says to me, God has kept me from sin, I ought to praise and thank God. Not seek to prove that in fact, you, sir, are mistaken. You're as bad as I am. What sort of impulse is that? The impulse ought to be, praise God, there is hope for me. Look what's going to be happening to me very soon, because God is with me as he is with you. Oh no, we can't do that. Excuse me. We have to say, I commit this sin all the time, therefore you must commit this sin all the time, and we always will, sanctification be damned. Ooh, strong words. That is what is happening when you accuse a brother's heart of having committed certain sins. You are not your brother's master. Now, maybe you're watching this and you're a pastor, or you have some sort of legitimate authority over someone. If you have legitimate authority over someone, you cannot judge their hearts. No grace, no mercy. This impulse to drag people down because we see the sin in ourselves and we see other people struggling with that same sin. We have to insist that everyone else struggle like we do until we're on top. That's a rapey impulse. Peace be upon you.